The Israeli military prepares to withdraw from southern Lebanon by February 18th, according to US media reports. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun condemns attack on UNIFIL convoy and vows accountability for perpetrators. And French President Macron urges Syria's new leadership to join international coalition against Daesh to prevent instability. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time, and you're now watching the Qnews Bulletin, and we'll start off with the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanese Interior Minister Ahmed al-Hajjar has announced the arrest of 25 individuals linked to last night's attack on a UNIFIL convoy near Beirut's Rafiq al-Hariri International Airport. That came as protesters, angered by the denial of landing rights to an Iranian plane, blocked roads and torched 3 UNIFIL vehicles, injuring 2 peacekeepers. Al-Hajjar vowed a serious investigation, emphasizing law enforcement's commitment to security and preventing unlawful protests. U.S. media citing an Israeli official report that the Israeli military is preparing to withdraw from southern Lebanon by February 18th. Meanwhile, the Trump administration says it is working to implement a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon, while Lebanese President Joseph Aoun opposes any extension of Israel's presence in the south. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has condemned the attack on the convoy of UNIFIL's deputy commander, vowing that the perpetrators will be held accountable. He also condemned recent violent incidents in Beirut, stressing that security forces will not tolerate any attempts to destabilize Lebanon. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has directed authorities not to tolerate any attempts to disrupt public security, including attacks on public and private property or roadblocks. During a meeting with the Interior Minister Ahmed Hajjar, Salam ordered the immediate arrest of those responsible for recent violence. He is set to chair a high-level security meeting today to discuss the country's stability. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon has confirmed that its outgoing deputy commander was injured and a convoy came under attack while en route to Beirut Airport. The mission called the assault a flagrant violation of international law that could be classified as a war crime. UNIFIL urged the Lebanese government to conduct an immediate and thorough investigation to hold the perpetrators accountable. Lebanon's Central Security Council, led by Interior Minister Ahmed Hajjar, has convened an emergency meeting to assess the country's security situation following the attack on UNIFIL peacekeepers. Minister Hajjar condemned the attack, calling it a serious crime that threatens stability. From Lebanon, we now move to the latest developments in Syria. French President Emmanuel Macron has called on Syria's new leadership to consider joining the Iraq-based international coalition against Daesh to prevent instability during its transitional period. Speaking at an international conference in Paris, Macron addressed Syrian Foreign Minister Assad Hassan al-Shibani, who led a delegation on Syria's first official visit to the European Union since the December overthrow of former President Bashar al-Assad. The conference brought together regional and Western powers to discuss strategies for safeguarding Syria's fragile transition as tensions continue to rise across the Middle East. The visit also follows President Macron's recent invitation to Syria's transitional president Ahmed al-Shara for talks in France. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot has called for a clear and binding transitional timeline in Syria as world leaders gathered in Paris to support the country's fragile political transition. Attending the conference was Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shibani, leading a delegation on Syria's first official visit to the European Union since the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. The visit also comes days after French President Emmanuel Macron invited Syria's transitional president Ahmed al-Shara to France. Regional and Western powers at the conference discussed ways to stabilize Syria amid ongoing regional turmoil and ensure a smooth transition of power. A Syrian preparatory committee has announced that armed groups refusing to disarm and submit to the Defense Ministry's authority will be excluded from the country's national dialogue on its future. The statement raises concerns that the Syrian Democratic Forces, which control large parts of northern and eastern Syria, could be left out of the national conference unless they comply with disarmament demands from the new Damascus government. The seven-member committee is tasked with preparing for the national conference, where interim President Ahmed al-Shara will present a statement forming the foundation for a constitutional declaration. The new Syrian administration has called for the SDF to integrate into the national armed forces, but rejected the group's proposal to remain in a separate military bloc within the army. China's UN Permanent Representative Fu Kong has called on the international community to step up support for Syria and ensure it does not become a haven for terrorist groups. At a UN Security Council briefing, China's envoy Fu Kong urged global support for Syria's political transition, emphasizing the need for aid, stability, and an inclusive national dialogue. He called for a clear timeline in the process and warned that Syria must not become a terrorist haven, stressing this as a red line for the international community. And now we turn to the latest developments in Gaza. A bus carrying freed Palestinian detainees has arrived in Ramallah, the West Bank, following their release as part of the sixth phase of the detainees exchange deal. The Palestinian Detainees Media Office reported that 36 detainees serving life sentences have been freed, along with 333 detainees from Gaza who were arrested after October 7th of 2023. Hamas has stated that the release of the sixth group of Israeli detainees confirms that negotiations and adherence to a ceasefire deal are the only ways to secure their freedom. The group accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of stalling and trying to evade the deal's obligations, to serve his political interests. Hamas stressed that it secured guarantees from mediators before resuming the exchange process and vowed not to allow the agreement to fail. An Egyptian source has confirmed that Egypt is intensifying efforts to form a temporary committee to oversee the relief and reconstruction process in the Gaza Strip. The sources also stated that Hamas has affirmed its commitment to the three-phase ceasefire agreement and its decision not to participate in governing Gaza in the upcoming phase. The Egyptian Prime Minister has reaffirmed Egypt's unwavering support for Palestine's right to self-determination and statehood. That comes as President Mahmoud Abbas praised Egypt's consistent stance and commitment to defending Palestinian rights. He also expressed hope that the upcoming Arab Summit on February 27th would reinforce support for Palestine, ensuring a strong regional and international stance amid ongoing developments. That came during their meeting in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, at the 38th Ordinary Session of the African Union Summit. That came as they spoke at a press conference near the Rafah crossing. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has firmly rejected any attempts to forcibly displace Palestinians from their homeland. Speaking at the 38th African Union Summit in Ethiopia, Abbas dismissed any notion of implementing a new deal of the century, calling such ideas delusional. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has praised mediators for their role in maintaining the ceasefire in Gaza. Speaking at the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Guterres called for the truce to be upheld and for all detainees to be released.
As a result of the continuation of the M23 offensive, threatens to push the entire region over the precipice.
UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini has warned that Gaza narrowly avoided famine but remains on the brink of a major food crisis. He stated that the war has completely destroyed Gaza's vital infrastructure, adding that the agency's current resources are insufficient to meet the scale of humanitarian needs. And for more analysis, we now move to Mark in our newsroom. Mark.
Thanks very much, Hani. Now, for more on the situation in Gaza, we are joined from Cairo by Al Akhbar daily newspaper editor-in-chief, Dr. Osama El Said. Welcome to Q News. So, Egypt has pushed to form a temporary committee to oversee relief and reconstruction in Gaza. What would you say are the key objectives?
Firstly, this resolution is a very significant one, as the Hamas presence in the Gaza Strip would have a negative impact either internationally or upon the preservation of the regional partners. In addition, that would give a pretext for those who are demanding for displacing the Palestinian people and the obstacling the reconstruction process. And I think this committee or this nation is a very significant one that fulfill the demands of the international Arab needs and demands, and to have a good consistency with putting opinion on a new page in Gaza. And according to the available information, it's going to be in a temporary committee, meaning that it's not going to run or govern Gaza until would reach a perception of the situation of Gaza, either through elections or via the Palestinians, to have a full consensus internationally and regionally. And I think this committee would play a significant role either in delivering the humanitarian aid or in the sphere of the reconstruction process that require a great effort, international and regional, as well as the participation of several partners. And therefore, the committee would play a great role in the process of coordination, the arrangements of the reconstruction, gaining the international trust, and the expansion of the reconstruction of the strip that's been destroyed entirely during the Israeli aggression.
Now, how might the decision by Hamas to refrain from governing Gaza in the next phase, how might that shape the political and administrative landscape of the Gaza Strip?
Certainly, Hamas might have responded to the realistic or the political reality, as the presence of Hamas would represent a great challenge for everyone, the mediators and the international partners. That would evoke the rejections by the U.S. administration as well as Israel. So that would lead to great and hard repercussions for the populations of the city, of the Strip. So Hamas' desire of not governing, Hamas would represent a beginning of solution and a peaceful solution for the Palestinian state or the Gaza Strip in particular. It might lead for a political vision that would lead for the two-state solution and a viable Palestinian statehood. Things would be rely on a specific faction to govern Gaza and might establish a state of a pure Palestinian will. And then Hamas might be having a part of the role, at least would come through a democratic process, through the establishment of a prolonged Palestinian state that would represent a necessity of regain the stability in the region. I think this perception should be worked upon and should be also adopted not only by the most influential Middle East countries, but should also be adopted by different partners in the world, as it is the only path that would guarantee a non-repetition of the crisis that we've seen in Gaza, either in the past 15 months or through all the previous rounds of conflict with Israel.
So, Dr. Al-Sayed, given today's developments with the latest detainee exchange, what would you say are the prospects for a longer-term ceasefire in Gaza and holding through the next two phases?
Certainly, the sixth round of detainees swap was the most difficult one, due to there was a fears and concern and American threats by opening the hell doors, as quoted by President Trump, but this would give a sign of optimism by implementing the process of the exchange by releasing 3 Israeli detainees in return of 339 Palestinian prisoners. I think this is a great signal for the political partners will in implementing the truce, particularly Egypt and Qatar, and surely the United States, as long as there is a desire of all the parties of completion of the truce despite difficulties, and I think to overcome such difficulties and to complete such a step is very important and could be built upon. And that would, I expect that the following phases would be more easier, provided not to have a rejection by Israel, because it's clearly there are indicators by the Israeli government that do not wish to move on through the following phases of negotiation and a truce that would provoke more concern in the world. And Howard, on top of which the United States should pressure Israel to comply with moving forward in negotiation regarding the following phases of the truce. But up till now, even if it is a fragile one that's surrounded of several obstacles, but at least that it managed to be resilient. And I think that the credit goes firstly for the will of the Egyptian state mediators, particularly our brothers in Qatar, to execute a process in reaching a progress that has been achieved on the ground with this context.
So we're expecting the negotiations for the second phase of the ceasefire agreement to start next week. So do you believe that in light of the recent developments, the negotiations will be successful?
Certainly, it is very hard to answer such a question, particularly up to this moment. There are no indicators from the Israeli side to affirm its seriousness to move forward in negotiation. Even the delegation that visited Qatar wasn't a delegation having a mandate to negotiate politically, but it was only a technical delegation. This would postpone to move forward in the process of negotiation. I think to continue of the detainees swap between Israel and the Palestinian faction, that would encourage and move forward into the path of truce. But we shouldn't rely on
Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry to cut you off, Dr. Osama Al-Said, the editor-in-chief of Al-Akhbar daily newspaper. Thank you very much for joining us here on Q News, and it's back to you, Hani.
Thank you, Mark. Egypt has facilitated vital aid and medical assistance for Palestinians crossing Rafah, providing free healthcare, surgeries and humanitarian relief, while urging global support amid Gaza's crisis. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. The Israeli military prepares to withdraw from southern Lebanon by February 18th, according to US media reports. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun condemns the attack on UNIFIL convoy and vows accountability for perpetrators. And French President Macron urges Syria's new leadership to join international coalition against Daesh to prevent instability. This concludes our news bulletin for now, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.